Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Tony Romano. I'm a botanist with the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves, and I'm going to talk to you today about our project that looked at remnant habitat and rare species along Kentucky's roadsides. We conducted a 5-year inventory of this roadside habitat, and we earlier last year published our comprehensive report on that project. So today I'm going to kind of give you an overview of how we did this work and what the results were, and then where you can access the report for more detailed information. So roadsides have gained increased recognition for their potential conservation value because they can provide good quality habitat for pollinators, including at-risk insect species like the monarch or other, imperiled species. They also provide potentially good habitat for some of our rare plant species and our rare native plant communities, particularly grassland communities that are the remnants of what was once larger mosaics of grassland ecosystems. And so, in recognition of this outstanding conservation need, our agency, Kentucky Nature Preserves, partnered with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet to develop a 5-year project with the goals of identifying and documenting the highest quality pollinator habitat occurring along roadsides, and also to identify and document rare native plants and rare native plant communities also occurring on the roadside right-of-ways. We emphasized grasslands for this project, but ultimately we included all high quality or rare native plant communities that occurred in the rights of way. And so this is a look at how we organized our surveys. So over the course of 5 years, we surveyed approximately 31,000 miles of road. That included all of the state maintained roads. So that would be the interstates, the state highway system, and the parkways. Our surveys did not include local roads or lower level county roads that don't receive state maintenance. So just to be clear about where exactly we were working. On this map, you can see the 12 districts that KYTC maintains. And so the way we broke things out was to just select 2 to 3 districts for each year of the project. And we kind of grouped them by ecoregions of the state. So you can see we started in those gray counties in the center of the map. That roughly corresponds to the Big Barrens region, which historically was mostly grassland or other woodland and barrens grassland communities. We then went to the southeast and worked in districts 8, 11, and part of District 4. That included a lot of the Cumberland Plateau. In the third year, we worked in Western Kentucky. In the fourth year, we went to far Eastern Kentucky. And then finally, we concluded the project in the Bluegrass region in Districts 6 and 7. Some of the general site selection criteria that we used are listed here. This isn't a complete list, but it gives you an idea of the different things our surveyors were looking for. And again, I'll kind of defer to our final report for more details about our exact methodology. But some of the key indicators we looked at were abundant native forbs, dominant warm season grasses. Some of those weren't necessarily the best indicators. So something like broom sedge, Andropogon virginicus, is kind of a false friend. It's not always the best indicator of good roadside habitat, but overall, in general, abundant warm season grasses was something we were looking for. Rock outcropping or shallow soils can be good indicators of certain grassland types. So that's something we kept an eye out for. And then we developed a couple lists to help us. One of these was focal species. So focal species were used mostly in the planning process of this project. So these were species that are on the Kentucky state rare plant list that have a limited geographic extent. So they only occur in certain counties or regions of the state. And they also had a limited blooming period as well. And so we used that to help structure our surveys so that we could essentially make sure we had people in the right counties at the right time to hopefully see these plants occurring on the roadways. And then the indicator species list is actually a much bigger list. This is a list of species that correspond to high quality habitats. So they're not really found in degraded areas. You really only find them in remnants of higher quality natural communities. And so those species were really good indicators that if you see one, you should pull over and take a closer look at that habitat on the side of the road. For our data collection, we use Survey 123 as our platform. So this is just a software that we used on our phones. And we adopted the rapid assessment method developed by the Monarch joint venture. This is a pollinator scorecard that enabled us to kind of assign a numerical pollinator score for the habitat we were assessing. And then we also included our own conservation site scorecard that we adapted from a previous grassland mapping project. This allowed us to collect more complete floristic data as well as additional ecological data that might not be captured by that pollinator scorecard. So it was really those two things together that we were using to evaluate habitats and ultimately assign them a habitat category rank. And so the outcomes of all this was to establish a baseline inventory of existing habitat and rare species in the rights of way, and then use that information to inform management decisions. So these sites that we identified that met our criteria would be designated as roadside conservation areas, called RCAs. And those sites would be protected from broadcast herbicide applications and potentially receive modified mowing regimes to enable those plants to go to seed and reproduce more successfully. So these are the management categories we settled on. There's a lot of text on the screen, and I'm not going to go through it all, but once we evaluated a site, we ran it through a series of filters, so to speak, of assigning it to a different management category. The high quality sites are sort of self-evident, right? They're the best sites. We kind of consider them reference or baseline sites, and they are the highest priority sites for KYTC to implement some of the management recommendations that we made. The restoration potential sites were really quite good, but they're maybe a little more challenged by threats like non-native invasive species. So while we generally provided the same management recommendations, there may be a lower priority for KYTC to work on. And then the seed source sites are ones that still have conservation value. Maybe they have a rare plant population that's hanging on at that site, but they're otherwise significantly degraded, usually by noxious weeds, and it might be too costly or time intensive to try and properly restore these sites. But we didn't want to just throw them away. So we want KYTC to know that they're there. And our hope is that these sites can be used for seed collection and potentially salvage of plant material for use in other restoration projects. So that's a very quick overview of sort of how we approached this project and conducted the surveys. So now we'll talk about the results. And so over the course of 5 years, we surveyed 31,000 miles of road. We drove 5,000 to 7,000 miles of road each year. And overall, we evaluated 374 sites throughout the state. So that's what all those stars are that you're seeing. And out of those sites, we identified and assessed that 283 had significant conservation value, and they were thus designated as roadside conservation areas. Out of that number, we had 268 of what I'm calling standard RCAs. So these are ones that fell into those three categories I just described. 65 high quality, 124 restoration potential, and 79 seed source sites. We also had an additional 15 sites that were associated with Kentucky glade cress. So for those of you who aren't aware, that's a federally threatened species. It occurs in Jefferson and Bullitt County, and it often occurs right on roadsides. And its habitat requirements are somewhat unusual. It can really handle a lot of disturbance. And so our assessment tools did not do a good job of properly assessing these sites because of sort of the unique ecology of this species. But obviously, given its rarity and federally protected status, we needed to address them. And so that's why we kind of carved out this additional category for them. And so those are all the red dots you're seeing in Jefferson and Bullitt County. So this is the same map, just providing a table with the total habitat acreage. Overall, we mapped 442 acres of habitat in the right-of-way. That figure just includes the right-of-way boundary, so sometimes the habitat would actually extend off into the adjacent land. But for reporting to KYTC, we're just providing the acreage that is within the right-of-way boundary. So that's what you're seeing there. And if we were to map that habitat, the linear distance of it along the roadway, the total came to 127 miles. So we surveyed 31,000 miles of road and we mapped 127 miles of road. So this is much less than 1% of the state maintained roads that have significant conservation value occurring along them. So this really highlights that high quality habitat is extremely scarce along the roadways. And it really highlights the importance of needing to manage these sites appropriately so that they don't further degrade. And if we look just at our rare species observations, well, first of all, I should say we observed about a third of Kentucky's flora occurring on the roadside. So over 1,000 species overall. This is just at sites that we assessed. So the true number of species occurring on Kentucky's roadside is probably much higher. It's probably closer to like 90% of the flora if I had to just kind of take a guess at what that real number would be. And as far as rare species are concerned, we saw 258 different rare plant populations. That includes sites that we had prior information about, and we were able to successfully update and confirm that those plants still occurred there. And then we identified over 100 new populations of rare species occurring along the roadsides. Of those were 93 different rare plant species, including 3 federally listed species. So this once again underscores the importance of this roadside habitat. Whether we like it or not, these roadsides are providing habitat for these rare species. And so we really have a responsibility to try and manage them well. So I'm just going to kind of go quickly through some pictures of different roadsides to give you an idea of what things look like. I'm going to start with a degraded roadside. So this is probably what 90% of Kentucky's roadsides look like. You can see it's dominated by cool season pasture grasses that are introduced grasses. And while there are some forbs there, they're mostly lower quality, non-native forbs, things like red clover, wild carrot, and other introduced species. And in contrast, this is an example of a high quality tallgrass prairie remnant occurring on the roadside. So you can see there's a much higher diversity of native forb species. This site actually is home to 2 species that occur on the Kentucky State Rare Plant List. The photo on the left there is one of them. That's white prairie clover, so Dahlia candida. And while it's hard to tell in the photos, the grass species are also highly diverse at this site as well. So this was a really excellent site. This is examples of remnant glade and barren sites. So this is that thin rocky soil that I was talking about earlier. And this helps support a suite of species that are glade specialists that like this really dry conditions, including pale coneflower that you're seeing there on the left. We also mapped a lot of different wetland habitats. So that included many sites in Western Kentucky that were wet meadows. And while it's hard to see in this picture, this site had 2 state listed plants on it as well, including marsh pea, Lathyrus palustris, and Iris brevicalis. So these are just some examples of different habitat types that we mapped throughout the course of this project. And then finally, one last little highlight was the discovery of Pycnanthemum curvipes, stone mountain mint. This was found in Muhlenberg County by Vanessa Volker. She stopped to assess this right-of-way and discovered a plant that had never been documented in Kentucky before. So this is a globally rare species. It's rare throughout its entire range in the Southeast, and it is now known to occur in Kentucky. So we're really excited that this discovery came about from this project. And so here's a closer look at the flowers for that species. For each of the RCAs, we developed a fact sheet that we provided to KYTC that shows the location information, the habitat quality category, the different management recommendations, as well as additional notes and a list of threats at the site. This is something that can be printed out and just kept in a binder in the cab of their maintenance trucks and things like that. So it's a really great resource for them. And we also developed some roadside conservation area signs that have been deployed at these sites. The first signs went out in 2023. And they're continuing to be rolled out to the high quality sites first and then expanding from there. These are small signs, so they're very easy to miss. They're not really meant for the motoring public to see. They're really meant for the maintenance crews when they're in the mowers and things like that to see and say, okay, this is a specially designated area. I need to adjust my management accordingly. As I said earlier, we developed a comprehensive project report. It's available at this link. We'll also add that to the chat so you can find it there. And it goes into much greater detail about everything I talked about today. And then I am also happy to say that we're working on a publicly available data set. It'll be available soon, and this will facilitate sharing of this information with academics, other researchers, our partners, and other interested parties. So more on that in the near future. And with that, my contact information is there, and I'll be happy to answer questions during the Q&A session. So thank you.